Hey everybody, my name is Scott Newhouse. Thanks for joining me. This video is for you if you work at an employer that participates in the Arizona State Retirement System, and especially if you are eligible for or you opted in for the ASRS pension. So if you're a teacher, state worker, public employee in Arizona at some kind of municipal county, wherever you're working, if you have the pension, you probably do feel good about that pension, and you should, because most people today do not have access to a pension. They are on their own in terms of their retirement savings, their retirement contributions, and those distributions when it gets to that point. But the Arizona State Retirement System pension is not perfect, and there's three pretty big flaws that I see in it that I really think everyone that's participating needs to understand before they really start preparing for their retirement. So let's go into some of the issues. The first problem, and this is the biggest problem in my mind, is that there is zero inflation protection with your pension. So what does that mean? It means if you retire with a monthly $3,000 a month pension, you're going to get $3,000 a month for the rest of your life. Now that's fantastic, but there's a problem with that. That $3,000 today won't buy you $3,000 worth of stuff 10 years from now, 20 years from now, or 30 years from now. And so I've just done some quick calculations, assuming 3% inflation rate, what happens to your purchasing power over time. In 10 years, your $3,000 that you get in monthly income will only buy you $2,230 worth of stuff today. In 20 years, your $3,000 is only going to buy you $1,660 worth of stuff today. And then in 30 years, your $3,000 is only going to buy you $1,236 worth of stuff. And so there's going to be a quick graph that I'm going to put on up. The blue line represents your monthly $3,000 a month pension. And then you see in that red line, that's your purchasing power. And you see it goes down slowly every single year, maybe to the point where you don't recognize it too much on that year-to-year basis. But when you look at it 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road, it does make a big impact on your purchasing power. You're essentially taking a very small pay cut every year of retirement. And so that's where you've really got to plan for other assets, other investments to fill that gap, because you're losing purchasing power from the pension. So you need other assets that are going to increase above the inflation rate to increase your purchasing power. So that's the big problem number one that I have with the pension. The big problem number two is the income replacement gap. Now, financial experts say that they want you to replace around 80 to 90% of your pre-retirement income in retirement to maintain your standard of living. I don't love that rule of thumb. I think it's one of the more questionable rules of thumb, especially as it relates to retirement. But let's just roll with it for the sake of this video. If you're working at an employer that participates in the ASRS for 30 years, your retirement income from the pension is only going to replace around 70% of that income. And if you are like most people, you're not going to be there for 30 years. So let's, and again, I'm going to put a graph up on the page, but if you're working there for 20 years, it's only going to replace 43% of your pre-retirement income. So let's assume you make $60,000 a year when you retire. If you've got 20 years of service, it's going to be around $25,000 a year of income. And if you're you're basically going from $60,000 per year pre-retirement down to $25,000. Now, if you stay there for 30 years, which most people don't, but let's say you do, you would get around $41,400. Now, that's much better, but it's still like an $18,000, $19,000 pay cut from what you're used to. So again, and then one other thing, which we'll talk to next, but your pension's fully taxable. So we've got to account for taxes there too. So your pension's going to provide some amount that most likely won't meet your entire living expenses, especially if you're used to living off your salary before, and it's not going to adjust for inflation. So those are two big problems that we've talked about. Let's talk about the third one, which is the tax trap. And we really I just mentioned this, but it's really important to emphasize, which is that your entire pension is taxable as ordinary income. Every single dollar, there's no special tax treatment, there's no breaks. It's all taxed at your regular income tax rates. So when you get into retirement and you have these different sources of income, you could be looking at a triple tax hit. 100% of your pension is taxable. And yes, there's standard deductions, and you're going to get a new senior deduction with the new tax bill that's passed into place. But I'm just talking about those the pension that you get. It's 100% taxable. If you're taking Social Security, which you will at some point, up to 85% of your Social Security is taxable, depending on your provisional income, which we're not going to get into the calculation on that in this video. But that could also be a big tax hit with your Social Security. And then if you've got any traditional 403b, 457, traditional IRA, if you have those withdrawals in retirement, which you will, those are all going to be taxable as well. So with all those income sources, pension, Social Security, distribution, and distributions from your pre-tax investment accounts, you could be paying a pretty high tax rate. It might even be similar to what you're paying right now in your fully, working years. So that's one bad part of the tax equation. Another bad part is that we just signed a new tax bill into law, and it's going to be permanently reducing the income rates, extending the lower income rates that we have that have been in effect since 2018. But the problem is, at some point with the national deficits that we have pretty much every single year, the national debt, which is around $37 trillion, Social Security and Medicare trust funds, they're going to be depleted at some point in the 2030s if our politicians don't get their act together. And boy, it doesn't look like they're getting their act together. So with all of that stuff looming, even though we extended these current tax rates, a future Congress, a future president who are more inclined to raising taxes, they could do that in the next 5 to 10 to 20 years, don't know when, but I think that's a pretty decent chance that that's going to happen at some point, which means all of your income that you have, pension, Social Security, distributions from investments, the tax rate on all of those could also go up. And so there's a lot of stuff that I don't like about here, from no inflation on the pension to it's not going to replace all of your retirement income. And then the tax stuff is really tough when you have not a lot of flexibility in terms of kind of avoiding or minimizing those taxes on those different types of income sources. But all of that said, the pension's still a fantastic benefit. I think most Americans would love to sign up for a pension if they could. So I think you're in a good spot if you have this pension. But what I want you to realize from this video is that it's not perfect, and that you've got to plan for other contingencies in terms of other investments, as well as other tax strategies that are going to help minimize your taxes in retirement so that you have as much money as you need to maintain a comfortable standard of living. So I hope this helps, and I will see you next time.